Lucas stood frozen in his doorway, his mind racing as Mara stepped closer, her hands trembling slightly. Her face was pale, and her eyes, those eyes that had always seemed distant, now looked desperate. He had never seen her like this before. The confident, quiet woman who lived next door was now standing in front of him, barely holding herself together. I need you," she whispered, almost too softly to hear. Her voice was shaky, full of emotion that she seemed unable to control. "I can't do it anymore." Lucas didn't know what to say. His heart pounded, his thoughts scattered. He had no idea what was happening, but the look in her eyes told him everything. She wasn't just seeking comfort. She was reaching out because something inside her had broken, and she didn't know where else to turn. "Come inside," Lucas said, his voice steady even though his insides felt like they were in turmoil. He stepped aside, allowing her into his home. She hesitated, glancing over her shoulder as if expecting someone or something to stop her. But then, with a slow breath, she entered. They sat in the living room, the quietness between them feeling heavier now. Lucas could feel the weight of her presence in the room, as if everything had changed in an instant. He wanted to reach out, to comfort her, but something held him back. He didn't know if he had the right words, if he had the strength to carry her burden. Mara sat down on the couch, her hands twisting in her lap. She looked lost, her eyes unfocused as though she was trying to gather her thoughts. Lucas sat across from her, unsure how to begin. "I don't know how to ask for help," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I can't do this alone anymore." Lucas didn't know what she was referring to exactly, but it didn't matter. It was clear that something had been building inside her for a long time. Her usual calm and quiet demeanor had cracked, and now all the weight she'd been carrying was spilling out. "You don't have to do it alone," Lucas said gently, his voice full of sincerity. "Whatever it is, I'm here. You can talk to me." Mara nodded, but she didn't speak right away. Her hands clenched in her lap, and Lucas could see the tension in her shoulders, as if she was fighting against something she couldn't control. He could feel his own heart racing, unsure if he was doing the right thing, but he couldn't just sit there and do nothing. He couldn't watch her carry this pain alone anymore. She took a deep breath, as if summoning the courage to share whatever had been eating at her. "It's been building up for so long," she said, her voice low. "The weight of everything. I thought I could keep it together, that I could handle it. But I'm tired, Lucas. I don't know how much longer I can keep pretending." Her words struck Lucas hard, and for the first time he realized just how deeply Mara was suffering. He had only seen glimpses of it before, but now it was clear. She wasn't just struggling with the world outside. She was battling something inside herself, something that threatened to pull her under. "Whatever it is, we'll figure it out," Lucas said, trying to reassure her, though he wasn't sure how. "I don't know exactly what you're going through, but I want to help. You don't have to carry it all by yourself." Mara looked up at him then, her eyes filled with vulnerability. For the first time, Lucas saw the rawness beneath her guarded exterior. "I don't know if you can, Lucas," she said quietly. "I don't know if anyone can. It's not just about me, not anymore." Lucas furrowed his brow, confused. "What do you mean?" Mara paused, glancing down at her hands before meeting his gaze again. "It's about the past. The things I've done, the mistakes I've made. I thought I could move on, but they won't let me. They follow me, no matter how hard I try to escape." Lucas felt a knot tighten in his chest. He had no idea what she was referring to, but he could sense the deep regret in her voice. The things she was hiding, the things she was carrying, they were more than just memories. They were a weight that had shaped her life, keeping her from being able to move forward. "You don't have to tell me everything," Lucas said softly, his tone gentle. "But you don't have to carry it alone. If you want to talk, I'm here to listen. Whatever it is, we'll face it together." Mara looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and fear. "I don't know if I can face it," she whispered. "I don't know if I'm strong enough anymore." Lucas could see the battle inside her. She wanted to reach out, to trust him, but the fear was too strong. She didn't want to burden him with her past, and yet she couldn't hold it in any longer. "You don't have to be strong all the time, Mara," Lucas said, his voice soft but firm. "It's okay to be afraid. It's okay to not have everything figured out. You don't have to do it alone. The silence that followed was heavy, and for a moment neither of them spoke. But then Mara's shoulders slumped, and she looked down at her hands, finally letting out a shaky breath. I don't know where to start, she said, her voice barely audible. You don't have to start anywhere, not yet, Lucas said. Just take it one step at a time. If you want to talk, we can. If you want to sit in silence, we can do that too. Mara nodded, her eyes filled with unshed tears. She didn't say anything more, but for the first time she seemed to relax, just a little. It was as if she had allowed herself to lean on him, even if only for a moment. Hours passed in comfortable silence. Lucas stayed close, offering Mara space to process whatever she needed to. He wasn't sure if she would open up tonight or if she needed more time, but he was willing to wait. He wasn't going anywhere. As the night wore on, Mara stood up, walking to the window. She gazed out into the dark yard, her silhouette framed by the moonlight. For a moment, Lucas thought she might leave again, but then she turned back toward him. I think I'm ready to face it, she said softly. Not everything, but maybe one thing. One thing that I've been running from for so long, Lucas nodded, standing up as well. You don't have to do it alone. Whatever it is, I'm here for you. Mara smiled faintly, a real smile this time, though it was still tinged with sadness. Thank you, she whispered, for not giving up on me. Lucas didn't know what would happen next, but he was willing to help her face whatever it was she was hiding. He wasn't sure if he could carry her burdens completely, but he was determined to be there for her, whatever it took. Cliffhanger ending for Part 2. Just as Mara stepped away from the window, there was a sharp knock at the door. Lucas looked at her, his heart skipping a beat. Who could it be at this hour? Before he could move, Mara's face turned pale, her eyes wide with fear. She took a step back, as though the sound of the knock had sent her into a panic. It's him, she whispered, her voice trembling. He's come for me. Lucas didn't know who she was talking about, but the fear in her eyes was enough to make his heart race. He turned to the door, unsure of what to do next. Mara's past had come knocking, and it was about to change everything. It was a quiet afternoon in the neighborhood when Lucas stood in his garden, trimming the overgrown bushes. He wasn't sure what made him look up at that exact moment, but there she was. Mara, his neighbor, stood on the balcony of her house, staring out over the backyard with a distant expression. She looked like she was lost in thought, or maybe just in the wind. Her house was next to his, separated only by a wooden fence. They had lived side by side for over a year, but their relationship had never been more than casual. He knew her name, and she knew his. They'd exchanged polite greetings a few times, but that was it. He never thought much about her beyond that. Yet today, something felt different. He couldn't explain it. Mara suddenly turned toward him, as though she had sensed his gaze. Their eyes met, and she raised her hand as if to wave, but then she froze, her fingers still in the air. "Jump!" Lucas called out, his voice casual but loud enough to reach her. He was half joking, half curious to see what she would do. Mara raised an eyebrow, and her lips twitched as if she was about to smile. "I'm heavy," she said, her voice almost playful, yet there was something in it that Lucas couldn't quite place. "You'll need both hands." Lucas blinked, unsure whether to laugh or be concerned. Was she making a joke, or was there something more to her words? He had never thought much about Mara before, but today something in her tone caught his attention. She stood there for a moment, as if waiting for him to respond. Her gaze was steady, and Lucas could feel a shift in the air around them. She wasn't just talking about her physical weight, was she? There was a weight in her voice, something heavier than just the space between them. "Well," Lucas began, scratching the back of his neck, trying to play off the awkwardness. "I've got two hands. I guess I can try." He didn't know why he said it. Maybe it was the way she looked at him. Maybe it was the fact that something in her tone seemed to call out for help, though she didn't quite ask for it. Mara didn't respond at first. She just watched him for a few moments longer, and then, in one smooth motion, she stepped back from the balcony and disappeared inside her house. Lucas stood there, unsure of what had just happened. Was that a cry for help? Or had he completely misunderstood the situation? He shook his head, dismissing it. After all, it was probably just a joke. He turned back to the bushes in his garden, though the moment with Mara stayed in his mind. The next few days felt a little different. Whenever Lucas saw Mara, she was either in her yard, quietly sketching or painting, or inside her house with the curtains drawn. He couldn't help but notice that she often seemed distant, like she wasn't fully there, even when she was. She had a kind of quiet energy about her that both intrigued and confused him. One afternoon, Lucas was sitting on his porch reading a book when he noticed Mara again. She was sitting on her porch, the large canvas in front of her almost completely blank, but she stared at it with a frown. There was a certain tension in her body, like she was struggling with something. He hadn't meant to interrupt her, but something about her stillness made him want to say something. He closed the book and stood up. With a deep breath, he called out again, this time with more intention. "Hey, Mara, everything all right?" She looked up at him, her expression unreadable for a moment. Then she smiled softly, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Just thinking," she replied, her voice light, but Lucas could sense something heavier beneath it. "About what?" he asked, walking closer to the fence that separated them. She tilted her head, considering the question. "About who I am, I guess." She let out a small, almost laugh, but it sounded sad. "It's strange, isn't it? How you can live your life and still not really know who you are." Lucas felt a pang of something in his chest, something familiar but uncomfortable. He knew that feeling. The feeling of being lost, like you're just drifting through the motions, but never truly existing. He didn't know if Mara felt the same, but he wanted to understand. "You're not alone in that," he said, his voice softer than he intended. "I think everyone goes through that sometimes." Mara didn't respond immediately. She only nodded, her eyes flicking down to the canvas in front of her, though it seemed like she wasn't really seeing it. There was a long silence between them, and Lucas wasn't sure what to say next. He had never been good at this kind of conversation, especially with someone like Mara, who seemed so distant and mysterious. But before he could think of something else to say, Mara spoke again, her voice low. "I'm just tired, you know?" Lucas's heart skipped a beat. It wasn't just physical tiredness she was talking about. It was something deeper, something she couldn't fully express. "I get it," he said quietly, not knowing what else to offer. "You don't have to do it all on your own, Mara." She looked up at him then, and for the first time, he saw something in her eyes, something real, something raw. She didn't say anything, but the silence between them felt like an unspoken understanding. He didn't know if it meant anything, but in that moment, he felt a connection with her that he hadn't felt before. A part of him wanted to reach out, to say something that would make everything better. But he didn't know how. Instead, he stayed there for a moment, watching her as she turned back to her canvas, her face still shadowed with thought. He wanted to help, but how could he? What did she need? Did she even want his help? The days continued to pass, and Lucas couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. He saw Mara less and less, her porch usually empty, her windows darkened. The house next door had become a place of silence, as if Mara herself had disappeared. It was strange and unsettling. One evening, as he was sitting on his porch again, Lucas looked over at her house and saw something. The curtain in her window was drawn back just enough to see her outline. She was standing there, still and unmoving, staring out at the dark sky. He could have just stayed where he was, pretending not to notice. He could have told himself it wasn't his business. But something inside him urged him to do something. He stood up, walked toward her fence, and called out once more. "Mara," he said, his voice soft, but this time there was a firmness to it. "I'm here if you want to talk. You don't have to do it alone." Mara's head turned slightly, her eyes meeting his, but she didn't say anything. Instead, she stepped back from the window, disappearing once again into the quiet of her house. Lucas stood there for a long moment, unsure of what to do, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. There was a heaviness in the air, and it wasn't just about Mara. He could feel it, like the world was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Something neither of them could control.